Thanks. Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome to our talk on trustworthy AI. I'm a consultant at AWK in the field of emerging technologies, and I'm very happy to be here. A couple of years ago, I was sitting in your place when I did my master's in statistics here, and I'm very happy to be back here. And I'm also very happy to see so many of you interested in the topic.
Okay. Hello. I'm not sure if it's working. Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay, so also welcome from my side. My name is Rebecca, and I'm also a consultant at AWK in the field of emerging technologies together with Belinda. And we're very excited to be here and to talk to you about the question to trust or not to trust an AI system. But first, before we dive deeper into this question, we actually want to know from you, what is artificial intelligence to you? So you can take out your phones and scan the QR code and select the most suitable answer, in your opinion. So I'm going to switch.
Noch nicht, warte noch, bis ich es gescannt habe.
Okay. We see you're voting. No, cannot see it. Have to press again. Okay, how can we... Is it possible to switch the screen to so we can see the answers? Okay, however, we see very differing opinions in this room.
It's very unfortunate, you cannot see it.
Few people think it's just fancy mathematics. Some people think it's a disruptive technology. Some people answered that, well, it's cool, but you have to be careful about it. And actually, we also got some answers about it's an apocalyptic end to humanity. Okay, I'll just switch further. For some reason, we cannot show you the answers, but there was everything was selected. Okay. So, okay, then let's dive deeper into the question to trust or not to trust an AI system. So in the last decade, we have seen tremendous progress in the field of AI in areas like vision, also speech recognition, image and video creation, planning, decision-making. The list is long. So artificial intelligence can actually compose a piece of music. It can write a novel that is actually of really high quality. It can help us to get to better health outcomes by providing decision support. We can also feed an AI with words, and it will give us images based on these words. And it can also make us believe that Obama said in his speech, "Stay woke, bitches." So such advances have a transformative effect on what we in our society can do and disrupts several industries, including the financial industry, but also logistics, entertainment, medical field, by giving organizations advantages by through the automation of processes and reduced expenses, and by giving predictive analyses. And even though all of this sounds really good, we also have to take a step back and be a bit careful and ask the question, does artificial intelligence really just enhance our lives? So, to be able to answer the question to trust or not to trust an AI system, we will first go through some AI fails and see instances where the use of artificial intelligence actually went wrong. Then we will dive deeper into a more technical perspective on the risks and look at some principles that are designed to set ground to address these risks, and then we will apply principles to practice, and in the end give you some key takeaways and present to you a bit how we at AWK actually deal with the challenge of achieving a trustworthy AI system. Okay, so let's start with AI fails. So perhaps you have already heard about the Apple Card, but for now, just imagine that you hear about this cool new credit card called the Apple Card, and the cool thing about it is that you can connect your credit card with your phone, so you can just pay with your phone. Don't need your wallet anymore, and doesn't sound so special anymore today, but it was actually pretty huge in 2019. So imagine that you get the credit card together with your significant other, but you notice that something is kind of off. So although you and your spouse share a bank account and so on, you notice that your spouse gets a significant higher credit limit than you do. So how would that make you feel? Now, if I told you that an algorithm decided about this credit limit, how would that make you feel? Would you be angry? And this is what actually happened, and the allegations were quickly picked up by the media. The NYS Department of Financial Services did some investigations and finally ended up dismissing these allegations. However, there is still some doubt in the technical community about the methods they used for the investigations. Okay, this is like one instance, and we could think, okay, the Apple Card was just an individual case, but actually in the last couple of years, there was scandal after scandal in very different industries that made it into the media. For example, there was a case where artificial intelligence was used to support people in recruitment decisions, and at some point it was revealed that the AI was actually discriminating against women. Another example comes from a public organization where an AI was used to rate people who were looking for a job based on, or rated the people how large the likelihood is that they will actually land a job. And there the problem was also that the AI was discriminating against women and minorities, and that it was not at all transparent how the AI actually came to this, to its rating. So therefore it was also heavily criticized by the public. And another example, my last one, but you can actually, I guess you will get the slides afterwards. You can also read about several other instances. But my last example is regarding the chatbot Tay from Microsoft, which you probably have also, some of you have heard about. Microsoft did an experiment in conversational understanding, meaning that their chatbot was supposed to enter into online conversations and then learn about language based on these conversations. And Tay was then released into the public on Twitter, and took only a few hours that Tay then started stating or tweeting really abusive and offensive statements, such that Microsoft actually stopped the experiment after 16 hours. So not only the media attention has risen, but also concerns in civil society and lawmakers, and of course companies are not unaffected, and realize that AI also needs to be governed in order to prevent these fails. So what specifically are the risks of using an AI, and what do we need to pay attention to? For this, I will hand over to Belinda.
Thanks. All right, let's talk about the risks associated with AI. Now, first of all, it's important to realize that the risks of using AI are different than from the risks of using traditional software. Why is that? Well, first of all, AI is used for very critical purposes. So it's used for for making decisions at high scale, or for supporting decisions at least. Also, we see here that an example of how AI learns differently from humans. So there are certain ways AI learns, for example, shortcut learning, and then it's very easy to trick. So here in the image, you see on the left-hand side, you see an apple, which is recognized by an image recognition system as an apple. But on the right-hand side, the apple is recognized as an iPod. Right? So it's very easily tricked. Probably many children would recognize that this is an apple and not an iPod, right? So the next risk relates to the perpetuation of harmful biases. And you've already heard about the Apple Card, but here you see an example of the compass system that was used in the US to predict recidivism. So that's the tendency of a convicted criminal to reoffend. And an investigation of the tool, the compass tool, found that black defendants were far more likely to be incorrectly judged, to be at a higher risk to reoffend. Now, all this together leads to different things. For example, to the decrease in trust in AI in our society. It also leads to reputational risks for users and deployers, and it facilitates the malicious use of AI. Different regulators in different countries have realized that there is these risks associated with AI, and so they have taken measures. For example, we see here from left to right governmental initiatives, proposals for new regulations, or even regulations in place. We see there's a regulation on AI in place in China, and in the EU there was a draft, so a proposal last year in April, and it will take effect next year. That's at least what we expect. This is so in the Western world, the European Union is quite a pioneer in this respect. But also in Switzerland, there are discussions about regulating AI.
What exactly are they regulating?
May I take the question at the end, because I have extra slides on that, and then I will come back to that. If I don't, remind me. All right. So we will have 10 minutes in the end for Q&A. All right. So you've seen there are different risks, so what do we do about it? Now, there are different principles that can help us guide the development of AI. And before I talk about this, I would like you to take out your phones again and tell us, what do you think? What is trustworthy AI? Maybe you can think of what makes a system trustworthy. Maybe you know some use cases that you feel uneasy about. And let me just open a new question. Now you should be able to give answers.
How it works.
Okay, you see a lot of emotional reactions to this. Okay, limited, no bias, can be proven, define fairness. We will talk about fairness in a second. No info about gender, so privacy, right? Self-consistent. Did I see salami somewhere? Maybe I'm not informed about this sort of ethics principle. Well, regulated, all right. You seem to have quite a good idea of what it means. Now, let me give you a bit more systematic overview. Now, first of all, the system, to be trustworthy, has to be able to do what it's supposed to do, right? So it has to perform in a way, whether that be accuracy or, so, you know, if you know something about machine learning, you know there are different metrics to measure the performance of an AI system, right? So these fall under this category. Also, it has to be valid, it has to be reliable, and so on. Then, on top of that, there are certain system characteristics that are required for a trustworthy AI system. So these are, for example, it has to be robust, it has to be secure, safe, explainable, and interpretable. It has to fulfill certain privacy requirements, and it has to be fair. And lastly, on top of that, there are really principles that are supposed to guide us or organizations in their behavior. So these are, for example, responsibility, accountability, and transparency. Now, I would like to give 2 examples of these system characteristics here. So first of all, let's talk about transparency. So probably all of you have encountered a chatbot at some point on a certain website that's supposed to help you, guide you. Maybe you know it's a chatbot, maybe you don't, right? There are options, maybe you have tried to trick it to see if it's a chatbot or not, or maybe you know from experience whether it's a chatbot or a real person, but other people might not. So especially people who have no good understanding of technology might not know whether they are talking to a chatbot or a real person, or might not even be aware of the fact that it could be a chatbot. So if we want systems to be transparent, they have to tell you explicitly that you're talking to a chatbot when you're talking to a chatbot. Then I'd like to talk about fairness. So here's a definition of fairness. It says an AI system is fair and representative when unwanted systematic differences in treatment or impact across groups or individuals are monitored and mitigated. So in short, it means there are some systematic differences that we just don't want, right? It's kind of intuitive, but let's look at an example. So here we have a credit lending institute, which gives credits to individuals. And on the left-hand side, we see a group of women, and on the right-hand side, we see a group of men. On top of each individual, you see the financial basics of each person, so how much money they have. Below, you see the credit limit that's given by the Credit Lending Institute. And now what we observe here in this case is that 33% of women receive a high credit limit, but for men, it's 67%. So now this group of women could say, well, that's kind of unfair, right? So the Credit Lending Institute could decide to adjust its policy and give the same share of higher and low credit limit to the 2 groups. But now we have this individual on the right who could think, well, I have the same amount of money as one of the women. Why do I get a low credit limit? Now, I would like to ask you, what do you think? Do you think this is, so the options are scenario A is fair, scenario B is fair, both are fair, or none of them are fair? Okay. It's surprisingly clear. Yeah, interesting. So when we do this with different groups, we always get different results. It's very interesting. You think none of it, yeah, none of them are fair. Interesting. Some think A is fairer than B. Okay. All right. So the right answer is there is no right answer. So really it's a matter of opinion, right? And that also shows that measuring fairness is not about mathematics, it's about ethics. It's about deciding what you think is fair or not. And this is also why we need to talk about how do we get from these principles to practice, because it's challenging to implement these principles when you don't know what exactly you're supposed to implement. So when we talk about implementing these principles, the first thing to realize is that there's a difference between trustworthiness and trust. So when we have a situation in which the system is trustworthy but is not trusted, then we have unjustified trust. Unjustified mistrust. On the other hand, when the system is, when people trust the system but it's not trustworthy, then we have so-called overtrust. So that's the situation when people take their hands off an autonomous vehicle, but in fact it's not safe to do that. And then what we want is justified trust, right? In the middle, we want to have both trustworthiness and trust. Now, we get there in two ways. So we can create trustworthiness by having, for example, interdisciplinary teams, by making use of frameworks, of tools, and by using governance structures and organizations to enforce these principles. And then we can create trust by having a communication strategy, by being accountable for the systems that you use, and by applying for labels and certificates. So if we look again at fairness, I'd like to mention again that it's not so easy to measure fairness. So there's a zoo, really, there are tons of fairness metrics that you can use to measure fairness, but it's not quite clear which ones to use if you do not use qualitative measures, so interviews, ethics discussions with people to understand what fairness actually means for them. Then there are different toolboxes and standards. So here, for example, this is the Equitas Fairness Toolbox. It was developed by the University of Chicago, and it has a decision tree to guide you to pick the right fairness metric. Also, there's a toolbox from IBM. It's called AI Fairness 360. It's also very cool, open source. You can try it yourself. And IBM has also developed other toolboxes, for example, for explainability, for privacy and robustness. And lastly, I would like to make sure that the trustworthy AI principles are really implemented. We need different roles in the development lifecycle of AI. So all perspectives need to be advocated, right? I myself, I worked as a data scientist for some time, but then I decided I want to do something else. So now I have a different role, but I'm still working on this topic, right? So all these, the technical roles, the socio-technical roles, and so on, they are all important in the development life cycle. And I hope that for you, this is also an inspiration to see that there are various ways to contribute to the development of AI and also to make AI trustworthy. All right. Rebecca, back to you.
So slowly coming to an end. So in a nutshell, what do we want you to take out of this room today? We prepared 4 key takeaways. But let's pick up on our question from the beginning, to trust or not to trust an AI system. So on one side, AI landed several or many breakthroughs, and we actually should trust it because it has huge potential to support us humans in several domains in our everyday life. However, we have previously also seen several instances where the use of AI did not work as it was intended. So we see there is no easy answer to this question. Then, secondly, the risks that arise from using AI are different than from traditional software, and therefore efforts are being made in several countries to introduce early regulation. Third, we can derive AI principles that provide guidelines to mitigate the risks that are associated with the use of artificial intelligence. And lastly, to actually be able to apply these principles to practice and to create trustworthiness and to create trust, we need frameworks, toolboxes, and interdisciplinary skills and opinions. So lastly, I just wanted to give you a short detour in how we at AWK actually deal with this topic. First of all, we are quite a diverse team. All of us have different backgrounds, for example, in more technical domains like data analytics or engineering, but also psychology, philosophy, economics, and many more. And we also have different interests rooted in both public or private sector. And our main goal at the moment, is especially to seek knowledge exchange and especially with experts from the field, but also with our customers. There are a lot of developments happening in the field of trustworthy AI. So we follow market trends and developments and regulations, but also play with available toolboxes. And because we really believe that knowledge exchange in this fast-developing field is important, we also attend different conferences, or we also publicly speak about what we have learned so far, like we did today. Again, thank you very much for attending. Let's wrap up and leave some time for questions if you have. And if you want to reach out to us, you have our email addresses, or you can also scan the codes. They will lead to our LinkedIn profiles. Okay. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this interesting talk. Now, as promised, we have the question and answer session. Since this microphone doesn't work at the moment, I will ask the presenters to repeat the question so it's also on the tape.
There was a question during the lecture.
What regulation?
Yeah.
Yes, so what regulations are to be put in place? For example, what did China choose to put in place? What will the EU choose?
Yeah. So let me quickly go back to the regulation part. Okay, so China regulates different things. For example, they want AI to be explainable, they want it to be transparent. It should be, so they have different requirements, right? It should be moral, ethical, and so on. Especially what they regulate is AI should not offer different prices based on the data it collects from people. I can tell you a bit more about the regulation in the EU, if that's interesting to you.
I know there are some AI algorithms that can't be quote-unquote explained. They work alone, so to say.
Yeah.
Are these just unusable, or will they be unusable in China?
I don't know the details about the regulation, but it's true, some, like especially deep learning, is very hard to make them interpretable at least. Explainable is a bit more a different thing, but also for these, there's a lot of research on explainable AI, but still many algorithms are not explainable yet. All right, this is what the EU AI Act regulates, so we have different risk categories, basically. It regulates use cases. So, for example, we see autonomous weapons falls into the category of unacceptable risk. That means it's banned. And then in between, we have like minimal risks, that's free to use. And then in between, we have different regulations. So some algorithms need to be made transparent. So people need to tell you that they are using this algorithm. And then for some, you have to take different measures, like having an audit. So it really depends on the use case for this regulation.
They are actually ordered available technologies that we have ordered them into these categories.
Yeah.
Can I remind you to repeat the question?
Yeah, sorry, I forgot. So the question was about regulation in different countries. Yeah.
I would like to ask, AI learn with data, which they get from humans, right? So in a sense, they're reflective of what their surrounding is. And for example, to pick up on the example with the chatbot, which was completely abusive, it's because like the humans talked with them or it in a way that he would reflect it and then give it back. So what is your opinion about that? That in the end, AI is a tool, like a knife, you can cut something to cook something or you can kill someone with that. It's the same sense how you use it or in which environment you put it. And how would you address this problem that AI itself is not like bad or whatever? It depends also on the use case, on the surrounding and the data set it gets to learn, right?
Do you want to take it or should you?
To repeat the question, but it's not easy. Okay, so mainly based on how do you deal with the fact that AI learns from what you give it, or?
Yeah, and that humans are also biased, and the AI learns with this data set which is biased. In the end, also to be biased. So why should we be negative about an AI which is biased because we told them or told them to be biased in the end, right?
Yeah. I agree. So about bias. So the question is like, does the bias come from the data, right? Is it inherent in the system? What do we do about it? And I would like to show you a slide. I cannot, unfortunately, don't know why. But the fact is there are different sorts of biases. So there are biases that come from the system, so these are like computational biases or statistical biases. But then the most severe biases come from the data, actually, because it's inherent in our society. These are historical biases, social biases, and so on. And what we can do about it is, first of all, identify the biases. So there are different tools to identify and monitor biases, and then we need to mitigate them. And this can be done, for example, by data quality, ensuring data quality. So ensuring there's no bias in the data in the first place, but then also mitigating the algorithms to address the bias. Does that answer the question?
Why are you focusing on AI only and not ethical software?
So the question is, why are we focusing on AI only and not on ethical software in general? That's a good question. So at AWK, we also have colleagues working on data ethics, data protection, privacy, and so on. It's just we, as a team, we work with AI. But then what I said in the beginning, the risks of using AI are somewhat different than using traditional software. I'm not sure if I can show you a different slide again. No. Okay. So there are risks that are related to all kind of software. So that's security, that's safety, privacy, and so on. And then there are risks related to mostly AI, and that's specific risks like robustness to adversarial attacks. That's interpretability. We heard before some of the AI models are not explainable yet, right? So deep learning neural networks, for example. So these are specific risks for which there's no clear answer yet, and this is why we need to do work on that. But of course, we need to make sure that the basis of like traditional software is also ethical. I agree. Yeah.
I think here you also have additionally, you have the fact that AI uses a data set to come to certain decision outcomes. And that AI is often used in critical domains or in critical fields.
Yeah. Automated decision making, for example, is a very controversial topic here in Switzerland. Yeah.
Okay, I think we have time for one last question. Anyone?
Oh, yeah. So my question would be, is there even a way to prevent the adoption? Because like deep learning is inherently untransparent by the way it's implemented. And even though we have ethical risks and regulations, adoption is still growing. So isn't it too late even? Because even if the rules are set up, people will still want to drive an autonomous car because it's comfortable.
I agree. So the question is there a way to prevent the adoption of very risky AI? Is that the question? Yeah. Good point. I think the economy is driving it a lot, and this is why we need regulation in my mind. I think regulation can do some things. I think banning, for example, autonomous weapons is one way, and there's more and more realization among regulators to do something about it. And then I think a second step is to just raise awareness about the topic, like we are trying to do now, right? To spark the public discussion about ethical risks of AI. Yeah. Very good point.
So with that, we want to thank you, and we have this in present.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.